The Golden State Warriors are holding their breath and their mid-level exception while they wait to see where LeBron James decides to play next season. But new reporting suggests the front office already has a contingency plan lined up in case the four-time champion chooses a different destination. Hey, what's up, everyone? Before we jump into everything today, that like button right there is what decides if this video hits hundreds or thousands of people. 1 second is all it takes, but the impact on this channel is massive. Go ahead and hit that like button right now. Seriously, it's the simplest thing you can do, and honestly, the best way to back this content up, because every single like pushes us further. So hit it now. According to the Stein Line's Mark Stein and Jake Fisher, free agent forward Rui Hachimura's camp has been in contact with both the Warriors and the Minnesota Timberwolves. The connection makes sense on paper. Golden State has made no secret of the fact that its full non-taxpayer mid-level exception, worth up to roughly $15 million, is being held in reserve specifically for James. If he signs elsewhere, that money would not simply disappear. It would need a new home, and Hachimura is one of the more attractive names still available on the open market. Spotrac technically lists James as a power forward, but most evaluators view him as a small forward capable of sliding up to the four. Setting James aside, the strongest remaining free agents at the power forward spot are Hachimura and Golden State's own Draymond Green, who is still working through his own free agency decision this summer. Beyond James, only a handful of unrestricted or restricted names would rival Hachimura in terms of pure talent left on the board, a group that includes Jalen Duren and Peyton Watson, both restricted, along with James Harden. Hachimura's case for being the best remaining free agent regardless of position is not hard to make. Over his last 3 seasons, he has connected on better than 40% of his three-point attempts each year, and his overall field goal percentage across that stretch sits at an efficient 52.1%. For a team looking to add spacing and shot creation punch off the bench, or as a small ball four, that kind of shooting profile is rare. The complication is price. Hachimura is worth at least a healthy slice of a team's non-taxpayer mid-level exception, but the market for that money is drying up quickly as teams round into their offseason plans. That could push him toward a taxpayer mid-level exception deal worth closer to $6.1 million, which happens to be the exact ceiling Minnesota is able to offer him under the current cap rules. Golden State, notably, might not even try to top that number. If the James pursuit ultimately falls through, the more likely scenario has the Warriors directing a starting caliber salary toward retaining Green instead, a move that would use up cap flexibility and effectively close the door on chasing Hachimura at a higher price point. There is also a roster construction wrinkle worth considering. If Golden State keeps Green, the frontcourt already features 3 players best suited to the power forward spot: Green himself, rookie Axel Lendeborg, and returning wing Gue Santos. Both Lendeborg and Santos are expected to see time at small forward this season due to various injury situations up and down the roster, but the long-term outlook for each points toward power forward as their natural position. Layering Hachimura on top of that group would create a genuine surplus at one spot on the floor, even accounting for the positional flexibility modern NBA lineups demand. Still, that logjam does not erase what Hachimura would bring. His shooting gravity and ability to create his own offense off the dribble are exactly the kind of skills Golden State's roster has lacked in recent years, particularly in stretches when Stephen Curry needs secondary shot creation to rest. At a taxpayer mid-level price tag, banking that kind of shooting talent would represent tremendous value regardless of positional overlap. The expectation around the league is that Hachimura will ultimately sign with whichever team offers the largest guaranteed dollar figure among contenders, and Minnesota currently holds that edge given their cap situation. Whether it ends up being the Timberwolves or another team altogether, the likeliest outcome has him landing with a club that has a more pressing need at power forward than Golden State currently does. For now, the Warriors remain in a holding pattern. Every roster decision this offseason, from Green's new contract to how the front office approaches its remaining exceptions, is being shaped by the uncertainty hanging over James's free agency. Whether that resolves in the Warriors' favor by adding a 2-time champion to their core, or forces a pivot toward players like Hachimura, will go a long way toward determining what kind of team steps onto the floor when training camp opens. Until James makes his decision, Expect Golden State's front office to keep exploring every contingency, gathering information on every player who could reasonably fit into their two possible offseason paths. That patience is by design. Front offices across the league have learned that the biggest names in free agency rarely move quickly, and James is no exception. Every extra day he takes away his options is another day the Warriors can spend lining up secondary and tertiary targets, making calls, and keeping their financial flexibility intact. Hachimura's camp reaching out is a small but telling sign that agents around the league already view Golden State as a team worth monitoring closely, mid-level exception and all, regardless of how the James saga ultimately resolves. While the Rui Hachimura contingency plan covers one path forward, Golden State's front office is also working an entirely different angle this weekend, one that could directly influence whether LeBron James chooses to sign with the Warriors at all. The catalyst was a trade nobody saw coming. The Los Angeles Lakers shipped center DeAndre Ayton to the Washington Wizards in exchange for guard Jaden Hardy and 2 future second-round picks. On its surface, the deal looks like a minor roster shuffle. Underneath it, the move may have reopened a much bigger door for Golden State. Washington now has 3 centers on its roster capable of soaking up significant minutes. Anthony Davis, rising young big man Alex Sarr, and now Ayton. That kind of front-court logjam rarely stays intact for long, and it has reignited speculation that the Wizards could finally be ready to move Davis after appearing to shut down trade talks just days earlier. The belief around the league is that Washington was never planning to keep Davis for the long term anyway. This latest move simply gives them a bit more incentive to pull the trigger sooner rather than later. Hashtag what a deal would actually look like. Any realistic path to acquiring Davis runs directly through Jimmy Butler. The 2 players carry almost identical salaries for the 2026-27 season, which makes Butler the natural centerpiece of an outgoing package, even if Golden State would rather find another way to make the money work. The real question is how much extra draft capital the Warriors would need to attach to get Washington to agree. One lightly protected 2027 first-round pick should be enough on its own, but it is plausible the Wizards push for an additional first-round pick swap on top of that. Golden State should hold a firm line against surrendering more than a single first-round pick outright, though sweetening the offer with 1 first-rounder plus 1 swap looks like a reasonable middle ground if talks intensify. Hashtag Shams Charania says a big swing is necessary. The urgency behind this scenario is not just speculation from outside analysts. ESPN's Shams Charania reported Friday that the Warriors need to make a significant trade to convince James to sign with them, specifically pointing to Davis as the acquisition that would give Golden State its best shot at landing the 4-time MVP. Charania also floated an alternative path built around acquiring a different star, mentioning Pelicans wing Trey Murphy III as another player capable of moving the needle in James's decision-making process. Regardless of which star ultimately gets the call, the framework of Charania's reporting is clear. The Warriors cannot simply stand pat and hope their pitch alone is enough. That pitch already has real strengths. Golden State sits closer to Los Angeles geographically than most of James's other suitors, a subtle but real factor for a player who has made his family's comfort a consistent priority throughout his career. The Warriors can also offer the full non-taxpayer mid-level exception worth $15 million, a number made possible in part because trading wing Moses Moody would free up the money needed to also re-sign Draymond Green this offseason. What Golden State lacks, according to Charania's reporting, is a healthy, complete supporting cast surrounding Stephen Curry and Green. That gap is exactly what a Davis acquisition would help close. Adding a 10-time All-Star of his caliber would immediately raise the competitive ceiling of the roster, giving the Warriors a front-court anchor capable of protecting the rim and providing a scoring outlet distinct from anything currently on the roster. Hashtag why the timing matters. James has not yet made his free agency decision, and reports suggest it could stretch into next week or beyond. That extended runway actually benefits Golden State. Every additional day gives the front office more time to negotiate with Washington, finalize compensation, and present James with a completed roster rather than a promise. The logic driving this entire pursuit is straightforward. Once the talent gap between Golden State's roster and its championship-caliber competitors narrows, the Warriors' other selling points, from their culture and championship pedigree to their location and coaching staff, becomes significantly more persuasive. A Davis trade would not guarantee James signs with Golden State, but it would remove one of the more obvious objections a max-level free agent could raise about joining the team this summer. For now, all eyes remain on Washington, on James's timeline, and on whether Golden State is willing to meet the Wizards' asking price before another suitor gets there first. There's also a broader roster ripple effect to watch. Trading Butler would remove one of the team's most experienced two-way wings from the rotation, meaning Golden State's coaching staff would need to lean more heavily on its returning core and any offseason additions to fill the void defensively. It is a trade-off the front office appears increasingly willing to accept if it means walking away with both a superstar big man and a stronger case to present to James. Whether that gamble pays off will likely become clear within the next several days as free agency continues to unfold around the league. Sometimes the most revealing trades are the ones that make the least sense on the surface. That is exactly the reaction around the league to Washington's decision to acquire center DeAndre Ayton from the Los Angeles Lakers, a move that has quietly turned into one of the more fascinating subplots of this NBA offseason. According to ESPN's Shams Charania, the Lakers sent Ayton to the Wizards in exchange for guard Jaden Hardy and 2 second-round picks, one in 2031 and another in 2032. On paper, it is a modest trade involving a former number 1 overall pick and a young rotation guard. Look closer, though, and the timing raises real questions about what Washington is actually planning at center. Hashtag why adding a third big man is curious. The Wizards already employ 2 notable centers in Anthony Davis and rising young star Alex Sarr. Adding Ayton to that mix, a player who started all 72 games and averaged more than 27 minutes a night with the Lakers last season, creates an obvious numbers crunch unless Washington has bigger plans in motion. The money involved does not fully explain the move either. Ayton is set to earn roughly $8.1 million next season, with Hardy checking in around $6 million, a gap too small to suggest this was purely a financial maneuver for either side. One theory is that Washington simply wants a hedge given Davis's extensive injury history over the years. If the front office is bracing for him to miss extended stretches again, adding proven frontcourt depth makes some sense as pure insurance. But that explanation only raises another question. If the Wizards are genuinely worried about Davis's availability, why not simply explore trading him now while his value remains high, rather than build a contingency plan around him? He is still owed more than $120 million across the next 2 seasons, a significant long-term commitment for a 33-year-old with a lengthy injury history. Washington has also suggested it wants to use Sarr or Ayton alongside Davis by sliding him over to power forward. That plan runs into its own complications. According to Basketball Reference data, Davis has played at least 76% of his total minutes at center in each of the past 5 seasons. Asking a 10-time All-Star to suddenly reinvent his positional role at this stage of his career is not a small adjustment, and it is fair to wonder whether that experiment would actually work in real NBA minutes. Hashtag a reunion delayed by one blockbuster trade. The subplot that makes this whole situation compelling extends beyond Washington's roster logic. Even before James officially became a free agent this summer, reports circulated that Golden State was exploring the idea of pairing him with Davis, reuniting 2 players who once won a championship together in Los Angeles before a separate blockbuster trade sent Luka Doncic to the Lakers and effectively split the pairing apart last year. That shared championship history matters in team-building conversations, even in an era when front offices lean heavily on analytics and cap mechanics. Players who have already won together, who understand each other's habits on both ends of the floor, tend to shorten the runway needed to build real chemistry. For a Golden State team built around Stephen Curry's timeline, that kind of familiarity could be valuable if the front office is able to actually put the pieces together. James has still not made his free agency decision, with some reports suggesting the process could stretch into next week or later. That extended timeline gives Golden State additional room to maneuver, potentially including moving injured forward Jimmy Butler and draft compensation toward Washington in pursuit of Davis, all before James ultimately decides where he wants to play. Hashtag why Washington's denials only go so far. Publicly, the Wizards have maintained they have no intention of trading Davis. But those denials carry less weight until the team actually signs him to the contract extension he is widely expected to seek. Until that happens, speculation around his future will not simply disappear, especially with James still on the free agent board and Washington now sitting on an unusual surplus of proven NBA size. Whether the Ayton trade turns out to be nothing more than a depth move or the first domino in a much larger reshuffling remains to be seen. But for a league already fixated on where James lands, Washington's roster decisions this week have added an unexpected new layer of intrigue to an already unpredictable offseason. League executives who have watched Washington's rebuild closely note that the front office has shown a willingness to keep its options flexible rather than commit fully to any single timeline. Stockpiling draft assets while retaining a star Davis's caliber gives the Wizards leverage no matter which direction they ultimately choose, whether that means finally cashing on a trade or holding steady and building around him for another season. Either way, the coming days figure to bring plenty of clarity as free agency and trade talks continue to move in parallel across the league.